Hey everyone, welcome to this episode where it's more of a male-centric one. We have changed. Lindsey cannot be here today, so Richard Parks is standing in, which is super sweet. Thank you, Richard. And today we have Alan Biegel, the editor-in-chief for NSU Magazine, Non-Sport Update Magazine. Welcome so much to the show today, Alan. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Now, Lindsey, Lindsey, Ingrid, we had met briefly at the Philly show. I guess it was in October.
Yep. No, that was in May. I was there.
May, wasn't it? Yep. Time flies, doesn't it? And Richard, we never met, but we correspond a lot back and forth in emails because Richard puts out a lot of product now. Richard is a madman. He's a one-man army. I've never seen a manufacturer as dedicated and putting out product as Richard is. But he sends me lots of information on his product so we can write it up. So, yes, I met you, Ingrid. No, I haven't met Richard, and hi to both of you.
That's really great. Well, Richard, would you like to start Alan off?
Yeah, so basically I'm curious what your original connection was with NSU, and I guess it was on the heels of a lifetime of collecting cards. So maybe you want to talk about your collecting early on and then how that moved into NSU.
Yeah, well, I guess it started because I have what they call today free-range parents. But back then, everybody had free-range parents. We were allowed to play outside. We only had to come home when the streetlights came on. That was our signal to get back in the house. And we walked to school. And I lived in a city in New Jersey. And that was about a 10-block city walk to get to school. And I'd walk to school by myself. But on the way home from school, there usually be a group of us, and we'd all walk together. And the interesting thing about that is, in my neighborhood, I would pass maybe 5 candy stores. I don't think they really have candy stores much anymore. But in those days, a candy store would sell magazines, it would sell comic books, it would sell cigarettes, it would sell lots of 1 and 2 cent candies. And it would also, right next to a register, there'd be a box of trading cards in all 5 of the stores. So we had our selection, and in those days, it was a nickel for a pack. And usually I had a nickel on the way home, and I'd buy a pack every day, and so would my friends, and we would trade to get the ones we needed and so forth. So I was able to amass, I guess, over maybe like a 4-year period, like 10 important sets, like the 59 Three Stooges and Funny Monsters from, I guess that was 57 or 58. And eventually I got to Mars Attacks in 1962. And I know Lindsey had said that she didn't know there were cards before the movie came out.
Yeah.
But when Tim Burton made the movie in 1996, he didn't really refer back to the 1962 set. He was referring to the Mars Attacks archive set in 94 because he included scenes from the reissue set that were not in the original set. That's how I know that he was a latecomer with that. But yeah, so, I would open up a pack of Mars Attacks and, of course, throw away the wrapper, because who wanted a wrapper? And then we should throw in his eyes. And the first pack I opened up had card number 19 in it, Burning Flesh, which for, an 11-year-old boy was the ultimate card because it was really gross and gory. And you just loved it. But I could never, I traded it to a friend of mine who was with me. And he says, I'll give you like 10 cards for that one card. So what I know, I said, sure. I gave it to him. He gave me 10 cards. Well, it took me a long time to get that card back. Not that there were any short prints in the 55 card set, and I just never came across it. As a result, I bought lots of Mars Attacks cards and crumpled up and threw out lots of wrappers. And, today a wrapper is, $500-600, I guess. I must have thrown away a fortune.
At least.
And I finally completed the set and, rubber banded it and threw it in the back of my drawer at home and not to be seen for years. And then eventually my mother said to me, why don't you throw those cards out? They're taking up so much room in the back of your drawer. So I did. So I got all these sets together and I, one at a time, stood over the garbage can and looked at each card and then threw it out. Looked at the next one and threw it out. And that was the end of my hobby collecting, because I got to the point in time where I realized that girls were much more important than trading cards. So, my interest, so my interest shifted, as I got older. I didn't even think about trading cards again until maybe 1978, when I was on a business trip and into Springfield, Massachusetts, I think. And the hotel I was staying at was next door to a shopping mall. And my meeting was until the next day. So I had the night to kill. So I said, well, let me, just go to the shopping mall. And I came across a store by a gentleman, I'm pretty sure it was Richard Sykes. And Richard, you may know Richard Sykes. He's an old-time dealer of much respect. I didn't know him, but I walked into his store and it was a trading card store. I think in 1978 or so. And he had a set of Mars Attacks sitting in a display case along with other trading card sets. So I said, oh, wow, I remember this. I hadn't seen it in 16 years or so. Forgot all about it. I said, that'd be great to get back, recapture my childhood a little bit. I said to him, how much do you want for that? He said, oh, that's $100. I said, oh, I'd love to have it, but that's crazy money. I can't do that. Can you come down? No, he says, down on this. So I walked out, left it there, never saw it again. Around the mid 80s, I went to an antique show over at Madison Square Garden. And there was a guy there, and I'm pretty sure it was a guy, Mark Macaluso, who at that time was a big dealer. Then I didn't know anything about the hobby. And he had a Mars Attack set. I said, oh, I remember that, from my childhood. How much do you want for that? He says, that's $250. I said, oh, that's crazy money. And I left. In 1990, there was a fire drill where I worked. And we all went outside the building. And I overheard a manager of finance talking to somebody else about Mars Attacks. Oh, I remember that. So I went over to talk to him. I didn't even know him very well. And he was so enthusiastic about Mars Attacks and stuff. And he had some of the cards, and next day he brought them in. And then he brought in some Batman cards, and he brought in, 66 Batman, brought in other cards. And I started to get really interested in it. The two of us got really friendly. And by the time the Fall Philly show, card show came up, we went to it. We drove an hour and a half to, well, it wasn't in Philly. It's never in Philly. At that time, it was at a Holiday Inn in Tehoon, Pennsylvania. But we drove there. And as soon as you walk in, the first table you see, and they were always the first table at the door, was Roxanne and Marlon Tozer, who I didn't know from Adam either. And walking around that show, it was like being back in the candy stores when I was a little kid. They had everything I remember, and a lot of stuff I never heard of before. But, I was overwhelmed with it. And I went back and I introduced myself to Roxanne, and we started talking. And I said, I really got to buy something today. So she had a set of 1952 Bowman U.S. presidents. And she wanted $75 for it. I think it was 36 cards, because that's how many presidents there were at the time, I guess. And she kind of tried to talk me out of buying it, because she says, they're only in VG condition. You can probably find it around the show in better condition, And I appreciated it so much that she was honest with me, that she tried to talk me out of buying something she was selling. That, we kind of chummied up from that point on. And I did buy the set from her. And I was just thrilled to have a non-sport card set, That's the first one I ever bought. Eventually, I did get the Mars Attack set. There was a show that was a great show called the International Non-Sports Show that used to be in a Hilton Hotel, pretty classy hotel at the time in Parsippany, New Jersey. And after the show, they would have an auction, the Shirley E. Ross Memorial Auction. Very few people at the show knew about it other than dealers and a few collectors that got turned on to it. So me and the finance manager went to the auction after the show, and I was the only bidder on a Mars Attack set. I got it for $805, which was a lot more than the $100 and the $250. But this time marches on, and I was really happy with it. And I was off and running from that point. I went to every Philly show since then, from fall 1990 to the present. I haven't missed one yet. And I think it was 1999, at the show, I was talking to Marlon Tozer, and he said, in the magazine, we're going to do an article on the 25 best non-sport sets of all time based on our readers' comments. And Non-Sport Update was something that I had seen at probably the first show I went to on the Tozer's table, and I picked it up, and it was issue number 1, their premiere issue. And I looked at it and I said, this looks good, but I got like 5 other magazines, non-sports, that I'm getting. I don't need this one, so I put it down. I didn't buy it. Little did I know, I'd be the editor-in-chief of it someday. But when Marlon had said he was looking for the 25 best sets, he says, send me something what you think the best one is. So I guess I kind of misinterpreted that, and I sent him a write-up on all 25 sets. He only expected to get one from me. That was my 25 favorite sets, and why, And I get a phone call from Roxanne after that, who said, we really like what you sent us. We can't use it all. We can maybe refer to the top one, but would you like to try writing for us? So I said, okay, sure, that would be great. So they asked me to write a sidebar within that article, and the topic was the worst sets of all time. And so I wrote that, and maybe it was like 200 words or something, and they put it in. They must have sent me 15 copies of the magazine. They didn't pay me. They sent me 15 copies of the magazine. So I distributed it to the family and the friends, and I was really excited about it. And after I did that, they asked me to become a regular writer. And from 99 until 2003, I became a regular writer. And after that, the editor-in-chief at the time, Bernie Mertz, and he was the 4th editor-in-chief up to that point, he decided to go for greener pastures, and they called me up and asked me if I would like to do it, because they thought I was pretty gung-ho, because I would submit articles without them even asking me to. Usually you would get one article an issue. Well, I would send them 2 or 3. Eventually, Roxanne said, this is not Alan Biegel Update Magazine. This is Non-Sport Update Magazine. But I was just enthusiastic, and I still am today. I've been editor-in-chief now for 20 years. In the first 10 years of the magazine's history, there were 4 editors-in-chief, and it's been me ever since. So
you have studied journalism, though, haven't you?
In college a bit, yeah.
Okay. So
what was the worst set?
Oh boy, I think it's a long time ago, but I still think it was there was a flowers set. It was like a hippie flowers set. I forget the name of it. Okay. Put it out, and it was just decals of drawn flowers that looked like they were drawn by like maybe a 4-year-old, but they were done like kind of like a hippie day glow style, and there were stickers, and it was just, there was no purpose for that set to exist. It had no text with it. It was just these stickers of flower power. That was the name of it, flower power. Yeah, very 60-ish, So I guess if you weren't high, you wouldn't appreciate it.
So,
well, I'm sure that set would do well here in Nevada now.
Oh yeah, right, exactly. In Jersey too.
So you kind of went from, actually, first of all, the moral to your story is, to all the little kids out there listening who have stuff in the back of their drawers, don't throw it out.
Exactly.
Put
Yeah.
something in there.
And don't put a rubber band around it either,
No.
because that kind of ruins the venom.
Yeah,
And
that does not work well at all.
especially the first card and the last card, they suffer the most damage.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah. And do you collect promo cards?
I only collect promo cards to put with the sets that I have, unless it's really something special. Like they made a promo card of me at the at the Philly show years ago. That I collected, and yeah, just to the sets that I own. I always try to be a completist. My drive is mostly the 50s and 60s sets, and I think a lot of collectors go back to their youth and try to recapture, all of that. But that's the way I do it.
Do you have, well, you've been working for the magazine now for 20 years. You've seen a lot of change in the way people purchase reading material, magazines, and stuff like that. How has both the pandemic affected sales of actual paper magazines? And over the grand scheme of things, in the time that you've been with the magazine, do you find it difficult to keep the physical copies going?
Well, we also have a digital version that's available through Beckett Media. But I think most collectors still like the touchy-feeliness of a magazine. Plus, in the physical copy, you usually get promo cards to go with it. In the latest issue, we have a lovely one called Dragons. I don't know who did it, but it's a really nice card.
Ingrid did that.
Ingrid, oh, what a surprise!
Yeah, but do you find that so you don't find there's much of a difference between say 20 years ago and now for physical copies?
Well, what's interesting is most magazines, even before the pandemic and even before the big switch to digital, never lasted as long as non-sport update. I mean, we're in our 33rd year. 33rd year. That's a long time, from 1990 till now. And what's unusual about us is our readership doesn't fluctuate that much, because I think certain people that buy the magazine, since they're collectors, they collect the magazine too. So they don't want to miss an issue. Promo card collectors want it because they get the free promo cards in it. And a lot of them are exclusive where they can't get anywhere else. And the readership remains fairly constant, which I think today is unusual because there's such a switch away from physical paper to online reading. But we've managed to survive and do well.
What about renewing your readership? People get older and then the younger come along. Do you see a way of attracting younger people to kind of get into the collecting and reading the magazine and all the things that go with it?
A lot of that I think has to do with the product that comes out. Organizations like Rittenhouse Archives, they tend to concentrate on TV products that have a large viewership, like Game of Thrones and products like that. I think that those type of licenses and tops with the Star Wars licenses, that probably initially draws younger folks in. And once they get in, they start to discover products like that Richard puts out that nobody's ever heard of sometimes. like a Manos, The Hand of Fate, probably one of the worst movies ever made, I would think.
One of them, yeah.
So you got to get kind of deep in the hobby before you start pursuing something like that. But it works for you, Richard, right?
It works because I don't go for big licenses, not just because I can't afford them, but it's like if you can get that really small but extremely passionate crowd, they'll cover the production run. And then I get to do something really, really weird and fun that no one else is even going to touch.
Yeah, right. Like I know when you did was it 11 series of Three Stooges cards? You did you did over 1,000 different cards, right? To do that, that's insane.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I bought every one of them, but it's still insane. Yeah.
And what's weird is that the collectors from series one are basically the only names I saw throughout all 9 series of Three Stooges. Very seldom did a new name show up.
Well, you're not going to start with series 3. You know, you're
Right.
going to start at the beginning. You know, you may not pursue it all the way through, but you're probably always going to start at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This brings up a little point that I hadn't thought of before that I'd like to mention. What do you think, for instance, well, you're part of a magazine which covers all the publishing of them. Do you think that small publishers and big publishers could maybe feed off each other a little bit and help each other? Like you just said, you know, you have Topps with the Star Wars licenses, and then Rittenhouse with like Game of Thrones and things, and then people like Richard and some of the other smaller ones kind of fill in the holes with card topics that maybe wouldn't work for the big companies. So it could very well be a symbiotic relationship, don't you think?
It could be, and that has happened with a company called the Sidekick Media. They got the license for Mars Attacks when Topps decided they no longer wanted to publish it. First, they did it together. They did a set together, Topps and Sidekick. And now Sidekick seems to be doing it on their own. So Topps still, that was an in-house product for Topps, so they own the license, and now Sidekick has picked up for it. Now, other companies could certainly do that too. I don't think it's happened yet, but they opened the door to it.
Okay.
I've got a feeling the larger companies have less financially to gain by teaming up with, you know, a tiny guy like me or Ingrid. So I think for symbiotic relationships, it's probably going to be on our level, like Ingrid helping Lindsey or me helping, you know, another publisher. It'll be like a cooperative effort with us smaller companies because we have more to gain from each other.
Well, you're doing that now, right? I mean, you're doing that with Addict Cards, and you're doing it with a couple of other small manufacturers, right? So that's a start. But like I said, I think people get into the hobby through the larger licenses and then develop the passion enough that they go to the small companies.
But that's something that that's maybe a way that could be symbiotic. That's safe, if you like, for both sides of the fence, the bigger ones and the smaller ones. If maybe the bigger ones kind of sometimes promote the smaller ones a little bit to fill in the holes, you know, and the smaller ones can maybe mention to the bigger ones, you know, it's all good. It's like, it's all right to say, you know, there's another artist out there who does amazing work. It's not going to take anything away from you because they would go over there anyway if they knew they were there. Am I making myself clear? I find.
Sounds like a good pitch, Ingrid.
No, me, you know, I don't know. I just find in my 16 years of being in this particular thing, it's been so closed, and, you know, I don't know, everybody's afraid of everybody, and I don't know, maybe it's just from an artist point of view, and it's not really how it is. You're actually, and Alan, in the best position to actually see all that since you cover all that stuff. What do you think about it?
Well, you know, the large manufacturers, they seem to be sticking with legacy products, things that are proven for them and safe. Star Wars, Star Trek, things along those lines, Garbage Pail Kids, Wacky Packages. Those are all so well established, and collectors seem to buy set after set after set. I don't know how many Star Wars sets there are, but there's got to be, I don't know, 75 sets at this point.
I'm sure the number of Star Wars sets has changed since the beginning of this broadcast.
You're right, exactly. So I don't know how much the big guys want to branch out to the smaller manufacturers. It's a different type of business. Their legacy and you're more imaginative and inventive because you go to places where they don't want to take the risk. Now, can they license things to you? that they're not that keen on anymore. That's a possibility. Maybe you could turn that into something profitable on a smaller basis. But I don't know if you're going to have that direct symbiotic relationship between them. I think a lot of them are too big to really be bothered with that, to be honest with you. It'd be nice to see, but I don't know.
It could be cool. Do you see that the landscape changing at all for trading cards in general?
Well, I think it's going to continue to evolve. I mean, it used to be that all you had was a base set, and you were happy with that. That's all you needed because you didn't know about anything else. And then they started to add a sticker, one sticker every pack, and you like that, and you were happy with that because you didn't know anything else. And then chase cards came along, and inserts came along, and then it got more and more elaborate, and it's got sketch cards, and it's got autograph cards, and inscription autograph cards. They even embellish that, and holograms and foil cards, and it just keeps changing and morphing and trying to get more inventive, which is a good thing, except that you can no longer have a master set, which I think a lot of collectors really like to have. But I think it's going to continue to go away from the master set concept because there's going to be so many different variables out there, and one of ones and one of fives and that type of thing. That the triple autograph cards that you can, they'll show it to you, but you'll never be able to get it.
Well, Richard is the one who really knows his master sets, and I think actually, Richard, you've never created a set that you could not have a master set of. Is that true?
Correct.
So
well, that's the difference in philosophy between the small manufacturers and the large ones. The small manufacturers try to give the collector everything they want. The large ones try to give you as little as they can so you'll keep buying. Right? I mean, a lot of times now you can't even put together a base set if you buy a box. You may have to buy 2 boxes because that's the way they plan it, to make you buy more.
That
seems a little underhanded.
I had a quick question because we were still on the heels of Alan over at NSU. I know you probably can't talk numbers, but have you noticed an increase in the number of subscribers to the digital version versus the physical version with taking into consideration NFTs and digital and the digital cards? What sort of trend have you noticed there?
I never understood NFTs, non-fungible tokens. To me as a collector, doesn't make sense. A lot of younger people seem to like it, but as far as I'm concerned, I want to touch it. I want to put it in a 9-pocket page so I can look at it. I don't want to look at it on the computer screen. It doesn't really feel like anything to me that I would own it even, because with collecting, there's always a sense of ownership. I don't see how you would get that online, but there are people going that way. And a lot of companies are really embracing it. I know Topps is. I talked to a couple of digital representatives at the Topps booth at New York Comic Con last October. And they have a whole big game plan, and they're putting out some items that are strictly digital and some items that are both, where you buy it digitally, but you can also, for an additional fee usually, also get them to send you a physical copy of it. So that's kind of best of both worlds. So there's all these variations out there, but for me personally, I don't see it. I really don't.
No, I don't really see it much either. I got to say, I still haven't understood it yet. We keep asking all our guests, please explain it to us so we can get it. And I kind of don't.
And now there's even such a thing as a vault. eBay has a vault. There's a company named Alt that has a vault. I guess they named it Alt, so it would rhyme with vault. I don't know. But there's a few of them, and Beckett has one too. And Not Split Up there's a Beckett magazine now. But what a vault does, if you're not familiar with that, is you can buy a digital card, and you never or a physical card even, and they put the physical card they put in the vault for you in some hermetically sealed facility at some unknown location, subterranean, of course, like 2 miles under the Earth's crust, and it's temperature controlled and everything else. And you never really get the card, but it's there and you own it, and you can sell it, and they'll take a cut on that, and it'll still stay in the vault and never go anywhere else. It'll just have a new owner. And you can even sell a piece of it, like particularly in sports, you could sell like Aaron Judge's ear, or whatnot, and somebody else could buy a piece of that card. So that's all craziness as far as I'm concerned. But it's investors,
I'm picturing a salt mine in Germany.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cards underground.
Well, I think investors are coming back more to the hobby in the last few years. And there was a big wave of investors back in the early 90s. You would go to a card show, and like that one in Parsippany, which was a large show. It had about maybe 50 dealers. And they had a lot of esoteric, non-sport stuff you'd never see anywhere else. And you couldn't get down the aisle. You were like this, trying to make your way through and looking over people's shoulders to try to see cards. But half of those were baseball investors, where baseball started to get too expensive, and they were looking for other ways to make money, and they went to non-sports. And that only lasted a couple of years because they started to realize that non-sports didn't appreciate as much as sports cards did, and they kind of left. But it seems like there's another wave of them coming back now, and that's where all these vaults and that type of thing is occurring.
Well, that's interesting to know that non-sports is maybe going up a little bit again. Do you have any say? Like, well, you're editor-in-chief. You do have a say in what goes in the magazine, of course. The latest one with Doctor Who, how did you manage to get that cover? That's pretty awesome.
That was not easy, and Harris Tozer gets a lot of credit for that because he dealt with Rittenhouse directly on that, and we have another gentleman, Eric, who does the layouts. They worked on the cover, and what was difficult was to get the BBC to approve what we were going to use. They didn't like the size of the logo. They wanted a different logo. They didn't like one of the images that had the Ninth Doctor. They didn't like the way his chin looked, so the way his head was tilted. So we went through a lot of gyrations until the BBC actually approved what we wanted to use. It took quite a while. It was one of the most difficult covers we've done. But I like the way it turned out. I think it turned out
great. It has my favorite Doctor on it. So yeah, it turned out really great.
Which was that, David Tennant or Chris Eccleston? David Tennant, yeah.
Well, David Tennant was
the
David Tennant was the one that brought me into Doctor Who. But then I went back and watched I tried to watch the classic Doctor Who's, and please forgive me. I know there's so many fans of the classic Doctor Who's. I just can't get into it. But with Christopher Eccleston, I thought he did an amazing job with his season. I really, really thought he brought a lot to it. And I like them all, but of course, David Tennant is my number one. But I think Christopher, he did an amazing job on that.
My wife just yelled from the other room, "Me too," she said. She said Harris actually interviewed David Tennant many years ago, probably around 2009, at San Diego Comic-Con. And I went with him the year before, and the two of us interviewed Stephen Moffat, Julie Gardner, who was involved with Torchwood, a couple of the cast members from Torchwood. Who else? Yeah, over the years, we've interviewed, a lot of people. Russell T. Davis, Harris interviewed.
And he's coming back.
He is, and he had the best stories, I thought. I really do.
The only ones, with the David Tennant era and all that, super cool. But really, evil marshmallow dudes, I don't know. That was the Adipose episode, if I'm not mistaken. That was kind of weird, but all right, yeah. But yes, Russell Davis. Although, of course, Stephen Moffat, if you want to get into conspiracy stuff and interwebs and all that, he's the guy to. I mean, I've watched all the Sherlock episodes
Yeah.
a million
Aren't
times.
they great?
Oh God, yes, they are. They really are. Yeah. But anyway, well, that's going off on a whole other fan thing.
But I think my favorite Doctor Who episode was the one that barely featured the Doctor. Blink was
Yes,
called the
that's,
first
Yep,
week.
yep.
that's a classic.
Yeah.
An utter
Yeah.
classic.
You know why they did that is because at the time they used to do, I think, 14 episodes a year, including the Christmas special. There just wasn't enough time to get them all done. So they would have one episode that had very little of the Doctor in it. So a second unit could do most of it at the same time that they were doing another episode. So it's just a scheduling question to get it in. But that's how Blink occurred.
That was an amazing. That was a Stephen Moffat episode, if I'm not mistaken.
It was, yeah. That
And
was his Weeping Angel, his invention.
totally, totally earmarked with all the intricacies of it and all. I just love that episode. It's so sweet and
Yeah. When I had interviewed him, I had asked him, because this was at the time right after David Tennant had done the specials. I remember them, and it was uncertain whether he was going to come back or not. So I asked Moffat. I said, "So is David going to return to the series?" And he says, "I'm not telling you." So he knew, but he wasn't going to tell me. So
no, of course not. I
it
wasn't
was
so
very
fond
much
of those,
scoop.
I wasn't so fond of those specials. They were okay, but
Yeah.
it felt, well, of course the Doctor would, well, anyway, this is not a Doctor Who podcast, but will you be doing any other specials of Doctor Who, or is this pretty much a
Well, we've done Doctor Who before, and I'm sure we'll do Doctor Who again. My biggest challenge is trying to think of new titles for the articles. This one we started out with Two for Who. That was the title. Yeah, the doctors are in, and I usually come up with the snappy titles for most of the articles, and in the table of contents I write that. And, there's a lot around the edges. A lot of people don't know what an editor-in-chief does. It's like being a movie producer. Nobody knows what a movie producer does. But I come up with what I think should be in the next issue. I try to do 2 new articles and 2 vintage articles to give it balance, and then we do a non-sport news section with hobby happenings and some auction results and products that maybe fall under the radar, like maybe some trading cards come out in a box of cookies that nobody would ever know. When there are people who just collect food issues,
does that still happen?
that still happens. It doesn't happen a lot anymore, but it happens here and there. And if it does, you'll read about it in our non-sport news column. It's done by Bob Holsett, better known to the hobby as Batman. And even people out of the hobby know him as Batman. So I guess he's Batman. We do that. We have Arnold Bailey, who comes out of Rhode Island. He's kind of like a vintage expert. He knows a lot about cards from the 30s and the 40s. He knows more than you ever really should know about cards from the 30s and 40s. Chris Mixer, you've had him on your podcast. He does interviews, sketch artists primarily. He's done a lot of people. He's done Mitt and Matt Gleb, who also painted our 30th anniversary cover, which was way cool. Usually every 5 years we have a special cover that we ask a sketch artist to paint for us. And usually it's a marriage of a bunch of different subjects, characters on the cover. Ted Dancer Jr. Was interviewed, and I just love Ted's work. I don't know if you're familiar with it that much. I'm sure you are. But he injects a lot of humor into his sketch cards. He combines topics, like sometimes he'll even do a card of himself, like as Wolverine and things like that. I've got one here I wanted to show you that he did, if I can find it. I can't find it. Yes, I can. He did this for Star Wars set, and this was the standard Darth Vader. This was a artist return card, for Star Trek, and he did another one. I'm sorry.
Fantastic. Yes.
Yeah, and then he did another one with Peter Cushing, and you could put them together. But then he wasn't satisfied with that because it was just too straight. So he did a third one, and this wasn't part of the set. This was an original art sketch card that he did, and he took it. I don't know if I can hold all three of them up, but he did it with Darth Vader, Peter Cushing, and Larry Fine from the Three Stooges in the middle. and
Cool.
So that's the type of thing that Ted does, I just love. I just love.
That is awesome. I met
Yeah.
him last May. He stopped by my table at the show last May, and he's really nice. He's really sweet, actually.
Yes.
Good guy.
We did Neil Camera, who also I find interesting. He did one, and I don't have it because I tried to bid on it, and I was outbid, unfortunately. But it was the #1 card from Mars Attacks. He did it as a sketch. The Invasion Begins, and this was for the 50th anniversary set. And that's the card that has all the Martians lining up to get on spaceships to go and invade Earth. What he did is he put birthday hats on all of them and had a birthday cake in the middle that said Happy 50th. And I just thought that was great,
Cool.
So he's good. We did Fred Wheaton, who's known for wacky packages. Really nice guy, too. Lily Mercado, who just did Philly a couple of shows before you did, I think. And so when we interviewed her, I had no choice. I had to call the column Lily Goes to Philly, because that seemed to work. Sean Pence, who does wonderful work. Joe Simcoe, who you probably know from Garbage Pail Kids. He made a movie, about Garbage Pail Kids that was actually theatrically released. And when I saw him at the New York Comic Con last year at the Topps booth, they had a fortune teller machine, the full size, with Adam Baum inside of it, and he had designed it. And you would put a coin in, and it would talk to you, and it kind of, the head would explode a little bit, and it would issue you like a promo card out, which I thought was very cool. Yeah, and Jeff Zapata, who I used to deal with when he worked at Topps all the time. He was the art director, and he always got me everything I needed. This is years ago. Well, he left Topps and went on his own just to work as an artist. And the first time I saw him at a show, I stupidly never knew that he was an artist. All those years I dealt with him, the subject never came up. And he looked at me like, what's the matter with you? You don't know I'm an artist. But he does nice work too. So, and of course, we interviewed two ladies with exceptional talent who shall remain nameless right now. But,
Do you have any scoops that you can of something that's coming up for NSU?
Yes, bet on Sun Up in the 6th race. It's a shooting.
What?
It's a joke. I gave you a horse tip.
Okay. All right then. Okay, moving on.
So do I have any tips for what?
If you had it, yeah.
Well, I can tell you what's in here's the Doctor Who cover we were talking about for anybody who's
that's really amazing.
Who for who. In this issue, we've got that article which I wrote. A top 10 James Bond autograph cards. We do a top 10 column every issue, and I mean it's all subjective. It's just what we think. We've done them for. I guess my favorite was top 10 Christopher Walken cards, which I just thought was really offbeat. Yeah, but we try to shake it up. We did like the top 10 Star Wars base sets, and every issue is a little bit different. I did Cardboard Conversation, which is really like my editorial. I do that every issue because it's therapy for me, I get to vent and try to talk about what's going on in the hobby, maybe about some new releases, some of my hobby memories, things I like, things I don't like. This issue is things I don't like. It's called Gripes. I got gripes, and I list some of the things that I think can be improved in the hobby or changed. Don Norton from Illinois, he's doing new and noteworthy this issue, which includes Dragons, Bargains 35th anniversary, and the new adventures from England, from Unstoppable Cards. And Rudy Panucci out of West Virginia is doing a retro article on the Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea TV show. So Arnold Arnold Bailey at Rhode Island did Hold 'em and Fold 'em, which is about vintage foldable puzzle cards, which are kind of cool because you could it has maybe like 2 or 3 images on it, and you can fold it in certain ways that it'll change the images. Like you could have Queen Elizabeth and Nikita Khrushchev, and you could combine it so that it has his head and her mouth and so forth, and make these wacky little images.
Or a
That
game
was
or something.
kind of sort of like that. Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
Next issue is going to be interesting. We do this once in a blue moon, but we're going to do a mostly Marvel issue. Last time we did something like that was we had a Mars Attacks issue on the 50th anniversary, where 90% of the magazine was different aspects of Mars Attacks. And we even we did Mars Attacks facts in like really small print, embedding it in different articles, things you maybe don't know that you'd like to know. Around the margins, we numbered them. So like, fact number 1, fact number 2. It was all through the magazine. We put some of them on Card Talk website. We put some of them in emails. There was like 30 of them, so if you were diligent, you could follow them all and read them all. But we're not going to go that far this time, but we're doing mostly Marvel issue. Rudy's got the cover story. It's a new set from Upper Deck, Allegiance, Avengers versus X-Men. Arnold's doing a vintage article on Marvel Comics related sets, the origins and the history that go with how comics made the leap to cards, artwork sets only. I'm doing an article and an overview on the whole Marvel experience, and a vintage article on Marvel movie sets, all the special cards that have come out for each of the movies that have been released. Chris is he's covering the most desirable Marvel sets that contain sketches. You'll like that, Ingrid. Harris, who doesn't write very often, but he's writing for this issue. He's doing a top 10 on Spider-Man autograph cards. It's nice to see him back on that. Don is previewing Star Trek Discovery Season 4, so we're done with the Marvel at that point. And Scott Thomas, who left us for about 5 years, but now is back with a vengeance. He's looking at 2023 Historic Autographs Company. They have 2 new products coming out. One is called Flight, which is obviously about flight, and 1918, the end of the Great War. So that talks about World War I. So it's kind of going to be an interesting issue. I think if you're a Marvel fan, you're going to like it.
Very interesting. And how can we help get people on board with buying the magazine?
Well, you can stand outside of Barnes and Noble and try to usher them inside because they can buy it that way. I think probably the best way to get people involved is just through talking it up, through the card shows, through the products that you guys put out. It's difficult to introduce new people into the hobby, but word of mouth, I think, is probably the best way to do it. What do you think, Ingrid?
Well, I think that it has begun a little bit because we have Funsat, who's a creator who's in France and is doing all he can to get people on board over there? Because there is no community over there. The sketch card, trading card community it's quite small over there. Lindsey's doing her best to get people on board in the UK, although there are a number of collectors over there and one or two companies, I think. So it's maybe, but the everyday people are not so aware of it. It's not like when we were kids and you had trading cards at the corner store. You have trading cards at the corner store, but they're expensive.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, back in the day for me, if you had the money and nobody did, you could have bought a box of cards for like $1.20. But who had that kind of money,
Yeah.
Now you could pay $200 or more for a box. So I think it's putting it out of range for certain people, especially kids, Although kids have $1,000 cell phones now, so
Well, yeah, and kids are into the electronics at a very early age, generally speaking, not all of them, of course, but generally speaking, which is why maybe the NFT thing is catching on in some way,
Yeah.
it's but I do think that the pendulum will swing and paper will be back. Maybe not from trees, but it will come back. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hope you're right. Well, I tell you, I think podcasts like yours and other non-sport podcasts that are out there can only help. Help it.
One last question I would like to ask those, as I was mentioning before we started recording, sort of more or less, card collecting is sort of kind of a guy's thing, club. Although girls did collect, they just kind of, in my day anyway, I collected cards. I didn't really like the topic, but because others took the cards, well, then so did I. It was hockey cards. I mean, that was not my thing. But do you think that there are more women collecting or involved in the hobby than there used to be, or do you see zero change in that department?
No, I definitely think there's more women. It's an incremental change, though. It's slow, but you can gauge the difference when you go to a card show. I definitely see more women now than I used to. What I don't see a lot of is kids. When kids do show up at a show, it's unusual and it's noted. People will talk about it. Hey, there's a couple of kids over there now. So it's an adult hobby at this point, and I don't know if that's going to change with technology the way it is. I don't know if that's going to change. But women, it definitely depends on the products that come out. Certain products appeal to women, and certain products don't. A World War II set, I don't think it's going to pick up a lot of women. I know I'm generalizing here, but I think there's certain propensity to go one way depending on your sex.
That said, actually, when I was at that Philly show last year, there was a very nice lady who was there and sitting with me at the table that we had at the dinner that night. And she was talking a lot about it. She knew she was only there because her father, her elderly father came to the show because he loved trading cards. So she came with, she had zero interest in trading cards. But she was saying, well, because she was stuck there with her dad and looking at everything, the vast majority of topics is not something that interests her. She was in, I think, the health sciences, I believe biology or something. So for her, she was not really into Marvel. She was not really into Star Wars all that much and all that. She said if that'd been a set on history of some sort, well, she'd have been all over that. Or, something else that was in her interest set, So I think it's maybe not the fact that it doesn't appeal to women, is just maybe the subjects are a little bit narrow, and you know what I mean? Everything is Marvel, everything is comic books, which are great, totally great. But a lot of people, a lot of interest, if you get my drift. What do you think? If some of the smaller companies, especially because we can take the chances, expand into other topics and interests and stuff that you would think, well, for sure the bigger companies would never touch. I mean, there's no way they could make their money back. What do you think of that as introducing new people into the hobby and getting kids on what they watch now? I used to watch kid shows with my kids when they were growing up. There are no card sets on those shows. If there had been card sets on those shows, maybe they would have been maybe not maniacal about collecting, but they might have gotten into it. What do you think?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I was going to ask Richard, since he's a small manufacturer.
We would need to definitely see a drop in the license fees to go into those kind of areas. I mean, obviously, I've heard the number 8 million bandied about for Topps' license fee with Star Wars. But I mean, even me, a typical license runs me about 10 grand.
Mhm.
So I'll do the sets that I need or that I feel need to exist. But like shows that Ingrid was watching as a kid, finding the person who owns that rights and then getting them realistic about what the gross sales and revenue is going to be for producing that set is sometimes a challenge. So
Well, I think that brings us back to where we started. We were saying that the larger companies will stick with the legacy products, and the smaller companies can't afford to pay for the licenses. So they do, that's a blessing in disguise, though, I think, because it allows you to do subjects that don't rely on licenses, that allow you to be imaginative and inventive, and go off a little bit into uncharted territory. So it's good and bad, I guess.
So we can kind of throw this out to viewers as to kind of get ideas going in their minds and seeing what they could do to get people into the hobby, which is good for everyone.
Right.
Is to become a publisher.
There you go. Well, we'll try to do our bit. What I'm going to try to do is to do articles that are a little bit off the beaten path in future issues and non-sport update. Not just about new products and old products, but try to come up with things. Like recently we did an article on wrapper ads, not wrappers, but the little ads that on the side of them, where if you collected 25 wrappers and sent in 25 cents, you could get an Indian headdress that you could play Cowboys and Indians and that type of thing. And we did a whole article on that because you could get a Barnabas Collins from Dark Shadows ring, for like 50 cents and 10 wrappers. So that's something that's different. That could appeal to different people. Did an article on test cards recently, which is kind of an obscure part of the hobby. I got one here.
What kind of card? Test cards?
Test cards are cards that the companies tried to market. They just put it in a few special stores to see if it would work. If it didn't work, they recalled them, never to be heard from again. So they never went national. They were only like for Topps, usually in Brooklyn or in Jersey City or places close to the factory. Well, they were out there, and they're very expensive usually. Like here's one. There was a TV show in the 60s, 1967, called Captain Nice. It was a terrible TV show. It was like a comedy Superman type of show. Lasted like 13 weeks. I thought that they had something, but they weren't sure, so they put it out on a test basis. So here's what. Whoa! Can you see that?
Yep.
What that looks like. This guy here who played him, you may know him. That's William Daniels. He was in the musical 1776. He played John Adams. He was an established actor. The show was awful, but on the back they did little comic strips, which was can you see that? Yes, that coming through?
Yeah,
which was kind of neat. So, and there's very few of these that exist. So we did an article on all different types of test cards. The point I'm telling you this is it's just so you know that we're trying to do different things to appeal to different people.
Well, I think that's fantastic. I really, really do. Because please go ahead, Richard. No, go ahead.
Do I have the talking pillow now? Harris, a couple of years ago, sent me some photocopies or scans of a vintage article done in NSU. It was sort of like a multi-part thing about start to finish how to publish a series of trading cards. It was like each of the major steps.
Yeah.
And I think that was a very, very old series of articles in older issues, maybe to bring more publishers and ideas and creativity into the hobby. If NSU did a series of articles on a step-by-step process, instead of waiting for my 10th anniversary book, that'll do it. Have an article, series set up so that, collectors who are very passionate about something can say, oh, this is not the great mystery I thought it was. I can do this because here it is, a checklist of start to finish, how to produce a series of trading cards with or without a license.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I know the article you're talking about. It was actually a 6-part article.
It was multi-parts, yeah.
Yeah, it was done by Charlie Novinsky, who used to work for Topps, and he wrote for us for more than 20 years. Unfortunately, Charlie passed away last year. But yeah, that was a great article, and I think you're right. We'll take that under advisement. We'll see what we can do with that. That sounds good.
Well, if you guys don't do it, I'm already. I've got my book started. I hope to publish it in October, and it's going to have a section all about. So you want to publish cards, and then every single step along the way with templates and layouts and how to talk to licensors.
I can't wait.
All that kind of stuff.
We may pick your brain on that one, Richard. That sounds good. Hey, since you're Ingrid, since you're a sketch card artist, I dug up a couple of my sketch cards. I thought you might want to take a look at. Want to see them?
Yes, absolutely.
This isn't actually this is a copy of a sketch card. Zina Saunders was Norm Saunders' daughter, who did Civil War News, and he did Battle and a lot of important and Mars Attack sets in the 60s. She's an artist in her own right, and I got kind of friendly with her a while back, and so she sent me in the mail this drawing she did of a Martian attacking John F. Kennedy, which I thought was kind of neat.
Wow, that's a printed card? A printed
card, yeah. She mailed it to me. And she's,
gorgeous.
Happy Halloween, Alan, she said. This was from a Mars Attack set the one we were talking about before that came out from Sidekick Media. This is oversized. This is a scene from the movie. Doesn't really look much like Jack Nicholson, but the idea is there. But what I particularly like about it is that the artist, Mark Dos Santos, he made it like a movie screen, and he put an audience down the bottom. See all those little heads? But they're all Martian heads because they all got the helmets on and whatnot. So the Martians are watching the movie. I thought that was cute. Warren, and I have a few of these to show you. Warren Martin Deck did this one of Shemp Howard from the Three Stooges. And it's from the Brygen set. And the reason I like this one is because it has anticipation built into it. He's just about to get hit in the face with the pie.
Very excellent.
This one I just like for its artistic sense and how it really looks so much like Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Nice.
Audrey Hepburn. That's Robert Graham did that.
Beautiful colors. So you actually have a nice collection yourself.
Yeah, I have some. This is Robert Graham too. I like this Christopher Lee as Dracula because the image is black and white, and because it has the red background and the red blood coming out of the mouth, it really shows the ferocity of the character.
Yeah, it's really striking.
And only a couple more. This is a two-parter. Clark Gable's shoulders are way too big on this. But it's interesting how you can come across two different cards like that.
That's gorgeous.
Oh, wait, who's the artist on that one?
That, I could never read that. Says it on the back, if you can read it.
Nope.
Yeah, see, and that's why artists really need to concentrate more on their signature and they should date it so they get the credit for it. I've got them. I don't know who did it.
That's one thing I always tell sketch card artists is like, if you have a fancy signature, great, but write it out underneath, because every sketch card is a business card. That's
That's
going
right.
to get you another client, a commission.
Exactly my point too. Yeah. Now this is Brian Kahn, and this is oversized as well. This is from another Brian set, and I like this because it shows Jekyll and Hyde on it in one image, and you can tell he's evil because he's green. You know, that's cool. And lastly, then there's an artist named Jack Davis. Anybody know Jack Davis? Jack Davis used to write for Mad Magazine. He did TV guide covers. He did a lot of movie posters, like "It's a Mad, 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 Mad World" posters like that, which had like 100 characters on it. And he was very. You could tell his work a mile away if you were familiar with Jack Davis. Well, over the course of a couple of auctions, I was able to put together this, which I had framed. I took it to professional place and had framed. And this is 1960 Funny Valentine's A cards. And
Nice.
can you see that at all?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And what it is it's the front and back of the original art of two different cards. And I put the original cards next to it. And on the top and the bottom, it doesn't come across now because it's faded a bit, but that's two yellow proof cards, one for each of the main cards. So this is kind of my pride and joy here. I don't know if you can just through
That is really
Isn't
nice.
that cool? Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's all I'm showing you.
That's pretty awesome.
But I like sketches. I like sketches a lot. There was a guy I interviewed a long time ago, an artist named Darren Ork, and I don't know if he's still doing that type of work anymore, but he was doing participating in a base set for a Three Stooges set put out by Brygen, and he submitted cards, and it had to go from Brygen to what's the name of that company, Richard?
C3.
C3, and they didn't like it, and they rejected it. And he had just done a rough of it on paper. And after I interviewed him, he wanted to thank me for doing the interview, so he gave it to me. So this was a Larry Fine he did from the Three Stooges that was rejected. So it doesn't really exist as a sketch card, but I just thought it was kind of neat.
That's a really nice thing to have.
Yeah. And that's it.
Well, see, if he had approached me, there's ways around this whole approval and reject type of thing.
I'm sure there's ways around everything, right?
Alan, we'll kind of head on out the doors slowly but surely. Where can people find you, and where can they subscribe to the magazine, or even get single issues?
Well, you can go to nonsportupdate.com for both purposes. You can reach me through the contact us link at the bottom of the screen, and you can subscribe directly by hitting the button on the main page. You can get single issues, you can get a subscription, you can get digital or print, like I said, both ways. Also, you could go directly to the Beckett Media website if you want to cut corners and do that. But nonsportupdate.com is probably the easiest. We also have a Card Talk blog that's out there that some may find interesting. So there's a lot going on.
I highly suggest that everyone who's watching this, please go out and share the news about the magazine. Magazines have to stay in production, and NSU is one of the few magazines left that cover this hobby. And so, yeah, please share away and let people know about it. Thank you.
Actually, I think we're the only one. I mean, the wrapper is still out there, but that's more for strictly vintage collectors. We try to be for everybody. So.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. Well, share away, everyone, and get your copies. Keep the magazine in production. Thank you so much, Alan, for being with us, and thank you, Richard, for having stepped in. This has been a ton of fun and super informative. Thank you so very much. And maybe you'd like to come back on down the road.
It'd be my pleasure.
Thank you so very much.